This is a lecture from Open Tuition. To benefit from the lecture, you should download the free lecture notes from opentuition.com.
We saw in the previous chapter, chapter 3, in Porter's Five Forces, how the central element there was competition or rivalry. And understanding the nature of your competitors and how they are kind of ranked compared to you, maybe by consumers, is very, very important to devising a suitable and successful strategy. So most of this chapter deals with the subject of competitor analysis. It then ends up by looking at two models, the Boston Consulting Group matrix and the product lifecycle model, which helps us understand maybe a little bit about where our products are and perhaps in relation to competing products in some cases, and maybe what we should be doing with them, again with the aim of maximizing our success. So competitor analysis, it's, as it says here, the CIMA definition, it's the identification and quantification of the relative strengths and weaknesses compared with competitors or potential competitors, in other words potential new entrants, which could be of significance in the development of a successful competitive strategy. So basically what we need to try to find out if we're in a competitive environment is where our strengths lie and indeed where our weaknesses are. Under the kind of SWOT analysis, one of the things we'll be thinking of doing is making use of our strengths and perhaps fixing up some of our weaknesses so we're not as vulnerable there. We also want to know where the competitors' strategies might be. Are they going to attack maybe a particular sector in which we're going to be strong? Maybe competitors are thinking of opening abroad, and maybe we should be thinking of that as well. Not only maybe is it defending ourselves against competitor strategies, but there maybe we should also be thinking about, in some cases, copying competitors' strategies as well. So we will be, in response to this information, what we're good at, what we're bad at, what competitors seem to be up to, we will be developing our own future competitive strategies. For example, if we discover that a competitor was thinking of withdrawing from a particular market, then this may give us an opportunity to go into that market relatively unhindered. And then finally, it's going to assist in developing strategies which can reduce our vulnerability to competitor action. So if we see that a competitor is maybe launching a new product, maybe what we can do is to try and maybe reduce the prices of our product. Maybe we bring forward the launch of one of our replacement products as well, so that we don't lose too much market share to these nasty competitors. Now, who are our competitors? And Kotler identified 4 types of competitors. First of all, there is brand competitors. And how are we going to remember this here? So think of a brand. If you think about an airline here, well, we're really looking at competition between what you might call equivalent brands. So we will be saying that competitors, under brand competitors, offering similar products to the same customers with the same size and structure really, will be something like British Airways, KLM, Lufthansa, maybe American Airlines. They're all large international airlines flying intercontinentally, providing what's normally called full service airline provisions. In other words, they give you food, they provide entertainment on the aeroplanes, and so on. And if you're kind of choosing, I want to fly from London to New York, then your kind of choices are something like maybe United, American Airlines, British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, something of that sort. You'd be really deciding between those brands. Industry competitors, that would bring in other competitors not maybe competing directly with you, but that would bring in to the British Airways, the KLM and so on. It But also their airlines, and also in the airline industry, there are airlines like EasyJet, like Ryanair and Wizz Air and so on. You've got the kind of cheaper, more basic ones coming in as well. So that's almost your fullest type of direct competition. But we'll only be competing on certain areas and certain routes. Foreign competitors, competitors who compete for the same needs, so they're technically quite different. Now in the UK, we have an air service, say between Manchester and London, and Leeds and London. And both of those journeys are around 300 kilometres, 200 miles, something of that sort. And it's something which can actually be very conveniently done by rail. Quite good, fast railway services. The railways go from centre of the city to centre of the city, whilst the airlines have to go to airports, which take a little while to get in from, and so on there. Now those would be foreign competitors, because the need is to travel from, say, Manchester to London, but they're offering quite different technical ways of doing it. And finally, you have generic competitors, competitors who are essentially competing for the same dollar. So we have, for example, in terms of the leisure dollars that people have, perhaps, you could be competing between maybe going to a football match or going to the cinema. You don't have enough money maybe to be doing both of those. Or you might be competing, going out for a nice meal in a restaurant, or maybe we have a day away somewhere, and maybe stay overnight in a bed and breakfast and so on. So those are generic competitors where we are maybe fulfilling very similar needs. In other words, the need for leisure and entertainment, and we're competing for the same income, but it's going to be very, very different indeed, how it's actually going to be supplied. I think you need to know, the differences between those, because you could easily be asked a question whether compared to competitors, you're asked to choose A, B, C, D, what sort of competitor is that? Now, Porter suggests when you're doing your competitor analysis, in other words, trying to sum up your competitor, this approach can be used. First of all, you have to try to get under the skin of the competitor. You have to try to see it from their point of view. Try to imagine what are their objectives. And they could have quite a different effect on us, depending whether their objectives was to have a very large volume of sales, or whether their objectives was to have a smaller volume of sales, but higher priced, whether they wanted to go kind of mass market, or whether they wanted to go kind of differentiation, luxury market there. And depending on which objectives they were going for, then it might have quite a different effect on us, on our existing business, and could have quite a different response from us on what we should be doing. And we have to think, what are also their assumptions? What assumptions are they making, perhaps, that if they want to go into kind of mass market, what assumptions will they be making, perhaps, about the price that has to be charged for products which are going to have mass appeal? Or if they're going up market, we might also be interested in what sort of features and what sorts of services they are going to be delivering in these more exclusive products and services. So that's what drives the competitors, what it wants to do, and maybe what it has to assume it will have to do to achieve those objectives. Like, how many outlets it would need, or how many products in its product line it will need. So this gives us maybe a little bit of insight into what makes the competitor tick. And then we have to almost go outside a little bit and say, this is what the competitor wants to do, but maybe what can it actually do? So if we wanted to go into the mass market, what would its strategy be? Is it going to start producing cheap goods itself, or perhaps it's going to outsource? Is it going to have the goods produced maybe overseas and import them and sell the goods cheaply here? How does it think it's going to actually realize these objectives? We might also be interested in a timeline for that as well. Does it want to do this very quickly, or is it going to do it in a more piecemeal sort of a way? And we also have to think, what are its resources and capabilities? We have to make, some sort of judgment as to whether or not this strategy and these objectives which have been set out by the competitor are likely to be successful, or whether, in which case we needn't worry about it maybe too much, or perhaps whether we think the competitor is really in a way doomed to failure, that it's bitten off more than it can chew. And then maybe what we should do is we should kind of hang around and wait to pick up the pieces. When the competitor has spent a lot of money unsuccessfully trying to get into a new market, it's exhausted its resources a little bit, then this may give us an opportunity to kind of come into the breach and pick up the customers who have been sorely disappointed by this failed strategy. The competitor analysis, what steps do we need to go through? And the 4 C's is what's used here. Collect information. So where do you get information about a competitor? Well, you could, for example, visit their website. You could maybe visit their store. You could maybe go to conferences and exhibitions where they are. You could have a look at the products which they are producing. You can do mystery shopping. You can go along or send someone along who acts or pretends to be a customer or a passenger. See what sort of treatment they get. See how the competitor actually delivers that product or service. You can look up their annual financial statements. This is all useful stuff in trying to judge maybe the capabilities and the resources and the strategy and the objectives of the competitors. You want then to convert this great mass of information along. Basically, you want to produce at the end of the day a nice report where you can kind of summarize what you think the competitor is up to. So we need to convert information into intelligence. So we need to, and this then goes CIA, which we should be able to remember for information, I suppose. You need to collate the information, put it into graphs, tables, make averages, etc., etc. You want to integrate various elements of information. So you might have seen something in their annual financial statement, something said by the chairman about wanting to expand in a certain way. And then you can maybe see in your town, yes, they have bought another outlet, another shop, and so on. So they do actually seem to be making some headway in realizing what the chairman said was their plans in their annual report. And then we have to analyze and interpret the information. We've collated it, we've integrated it, and then we have to really draw some conclusion, maybe about what they're up to. Maybe we can conclude what kind of sector of the market they seem to be concentrating on, or what area of the country they seem to be making a push for, and so on. We need to communicate this information to relevant people in our organization, marketing people, maybe research and development people, if we think we have to develop a competing product or service, the board and so on. They have to be made aware and be live to what the competitors are up to. And this then, when you communicate this to the people responsible and the people with the skills, should hopefully enable us to counter the plot or the ploys that the competitors are embarking on. There's a very good saying in English, forewarned is forearmed. If you get a warning about something nasty happening, you get that in advance, then you can prepare your defences in advance, and you have a much better chance of defending yourself successfully with this bit of advanced knowledge.